The alarm echoed through the military base, pulling Major Harris out of sleep. Instantly, he tossed aside the thin sheet on his cot and dropped his feet to the ground, wiping the fatigue from his eyes. Something was clearly off. That alarm only triggered. For threats nearing Earth, Harris quickly threw on his uniform and boots, his thoughts racing. What could it be? A meteor? A drifting planet or something far worse? Grabbing his tablet, he hurried from his room to the command center. Status, he demanded. As he entered, all eyes turned toward him with urgency. Sir, we have a massive fleet of unidentified origin entering the solar system, responded the young officer at the sensor console. They appeared suddenly near Saturn and are heading in fast. They are ignoring all communication attempts, Harris muttered under his breath. This was no accident. He leaned in over the ensign to read the incoming data. His eyes widened in shock. The fleet stretched beyond comprehension, ship after dark vessel covering. The stars as they moved toward Earth. Get me the United Nations Council. Immediately, he ordered, already anticipating the difficult message he would deliver within minutes. Harris stood before a nervous group of global leaders on a video call. Mr. Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that we have confirmed the presence of an alien fleet approaching at top speed. Early estimates place their arrival in low Earth orbit within 12 hours. Gasps and worried voices spread among the leaders. The Secretary General raised a hand to steady the room. Major, do you have any information on their intentions or capabilities? Harris shook his head grimly. Very little. Sir, their ship design does not match anything from Earth or known alien theory. Our attempts to reach them have been ignored. As for weaponry, judging by their numbers, we can assume they are well armed. This is unthinkable, said the Secretary, running a hand over his face. After all our years of wondering about first contact, it turns out to be an invasion. What are we supposed to do, Mr. Secretary, if I may interrupt? Said the British Prime Minister. While military defense is critical, we also need to consider public reaction. Fear and chaos will only slow our efforts. You are absolutely right, said the Secretary. We will issue a cautious statement saying contact has been made with an unknown force and that communication is being attempted in the meantime. Major, what defensive measures can we take, if any? Harris paused, thinking traditional weapons will have little effect against something this massive. Our best bet is to synchronize global missile defense systems and try to take out some of their smaller attack ships as they launch from the main vessels. Beyond that, we are looking at last resort strategies and resistance fighting. If it comes to invasion, the mood in the room turned dark at his honest words. The reality was clear to everyone. Humanity's military power was no match for what was coming after intense debate. Evacuation procedures for key urban areas were set in motion. Missiles were armed and global communication systems were placed under military control. As the world braced itself, Harris tried to catch some rest before the inevitable strike. But sleep refused to come. His mind raced with questions. Who were these invaders? What did they want from Earth, and was there anything humanity could do to stop them? Even for a moment, hours passed in a blur as nations activated emergency protocols across the globe. Harris was reviewing orbital defense systems when an aide rushed into the control room. Sir, the fleet has changed trajectory. All ships are now focused on the United States. Harris stared at the display, confused and alarmed. Why target one region? He got his answer moments later. A message cut through every signal. An alien voice, cold and hissing, echoed from every speaker. Humans of Earth. I am Commander Zax of the Tarragon Imperium. We have observed your species and consider you primitive, but you possess resources we need. You will surrender without resistance and submit to our control. If you do not comply, we will eliminate your cities from orbit. You have 2 of your solar days to answer, or we will begin the assault. The broadcast ended, leaving only silence in its wake. The weight of the threat hung in the air as the leaders in the room processed what had just happened. Humanity was being ordered to kneel or face total destruction. Harris knew these were not negotiators, they were conquerors, and they would show no mercy. He gathered his command team, instructing them to alert all weapons divisions, immediately arm every warhead, load every launcher, no backups, and connect me directly to the White House through a secure line. Mr. President, this is Major Harris. I believe the moment has come for a worldwide alliance of resistance. The decision was made, missiles were primed, and chaos spread as civilians scrambled to safety. What was once a divided planet now stood united in opposition against the approaching Tarragon fleet. Deep shelters were sealed and packed to capacity. Sirens wailed across countries as major cities emptied, leaving only fighters and volunteers behind to hold their ground behind barricades. The 2 days passed faster than anyone expected. Suddenly, the alien armada gathered in formation above the United States from his bunker. Harris watched the screen as the second sunrise brought not hope, but destruction. Fire lit the skies, and the invasion of Earth began. Rain poured down in thick drops as Major Harris looked over the ruined world that stretched before him. What used to be busy highways and gleaming towers was now reduced to shattered remains disappearing into the horizon. It had been 2 days since the Tarragon fleet had unleashed devastating orbital strikes on major cities, turning them into burning wastelands. Their opening assault caused destruction on a scale beyond imagining. Waves of fire swept through the dense cityscapes, leaving nothing but smoke and ash behind. Among the wreckage, scattered survivors searched desperately for fragments of their past lives. The air still carried the bitter stench of burnt flesh. Harris turned away grimly. Despite organized evacuation efforts, the death toll had already climbed into the millions. Entire generations of art, culture, and history had vanished in a matter of hours. It was nothing less than mass extermination. A young courier approached, quickly saluting, even though his uniform was soaked through. "Sir, we've established contact with a few resistance groups hiding among the ruins. Mostly civilians armed with whatever they can find." Harris gave a firm nod. Not surprised, desperate times created hardened people, and humanity had always been known for refusing to break when cornered. Numbers are unclear, but a few thousand are scattered throughout what remains of the major cities, mostly light weapons. No armor or heavy gear, but spirits seem high. The rain suddenly stopped, cutting off its endless rhythm. Harris looked up to see stars appearing between the thinning clouds. A rainbow shimmered around the setting sun, and for a brief moment he felt something that almost resembled hope. He turned back to the courier. "Get squads moving, locate stragglers. Tell the resistance groups to hold position and prepare for fast strike missions at dawn. I want maps and intelligence on alien positions immediately." As night fell and survivors huddled in makeshift shelters, the sky once again glowed with fire. Harris watched through binoculars as the enemy dropships descended onto scorched plains, releasing units of mechanized soldiers, their shapes vaguely human-like. As they moved under cover of darkness, patrols spread out to reinforce their footholds. Harris allowed a small smile. The aliens didn't realize that resistance scouts had already slipped into the ruins unnoticed, using night vision gear to follow their movements without being seen. Thanks to this intel, local militias were quietly moving into place, waiting to strike at the break of day. Harris radioed his field teams. "All groups hold position. Wait for my signal when it comes. Hit them with everything you've got across the ruined city." Fighters crouched in shadows, gripping their weapons. Harris watched the horizon. When the first light of morning appeared, he gave the order. Suddenly, explosions erupted along enemy patrol routes. Homemade bombs and shrapnel tore through confused alien lines as they struggled to respond. Resistance marksmen and rocket units fired from collapsed overpasses and broken high-rises. The invaders tried to reorganize, but the human fighters melted back into the ruins, only to strike again from different directions. Calls for air support failed as human hackers overwhelmed the alien systems, jamming communications and throwing their operations into chaos. Scattered and cut off, the Tarragon forces were left blind and vulnerable. The invaders raised their weapons toward the sky in fear, only to be silently eliminated from the flanks. Within an hour, the ambush was complete. Alien bodies covered the scorched streets. Along with destroyed tanks and armored transports, not a single militia fighter had fallen. Harris allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction as survivors returned to underground shelters carrying new intelligence and salvaged gear. A stronger resistance was beginning to form across the ruins of fallen cities. Similar events were unfolding elsewhere. Leftover military forces joined with determined civilians to strike at the Tarragons. From every angle, snipers lurked along shattered bridges. Medical traps injured enemy squads in nightly surprise attacks. Convoys vanished during stealth operations. The aliens were slowly pushed back, losing control of outlying regions now surrounded within their fortified strongholds by human-held ruins. It became obvious their traditional strategies were failing against such fast-moving, elusive enemies. Large armored units were replaced with smaller, quick-response teams designed to hunt rebel groups, but each destroyed cell was quickly replaced. By two more civilians proved to be far more inventive and relentless than expected, especially when fighting for survival with Major Harris. Directing from a hidden command center, attacks became increasingly bold and coordinated across enemy zones. The Tarragon troops were worn down as unseen enemies struck without warning or mercy. Supplies ran low and reinforcements were blocked. The invaders lost ground with every passing week. Human forces continued refining their tactics, building stronger networks of resistance from the ashes of destroyed cities, while the war's end remained uncertain. One fact stood unchallenged. Earth's defenders would not submit without a fight. They would make the aliens suffer for every step forward battling, through sabotage and sudden assaults in the ruins, until their dying breath. Major Harris stared at a battle-worn map laid out in front of him. Troop movements and supply chains were marked across devastated regions. 6 months had passed since the initial bombardment, 6 months of relentless guerrilla warfare. Despite their superior firepower, the Tarragons had failed to advance, locked in a brutal deadlock. Repeated ambushes had forced them to hunker down, unable to expand their control. Their logistics were strained and their forces overstretched. Meanwhile, the resistance under Harris had grown stronger. Factions had united under one command, and new fighters arrived daily. People who once ran now returned, ready to take back what was. Lost homemade weapons multiplied as engineers worked overtime. Tiny drones filled the skies, tracking every enemy move. Progress was slow but undeniable. The momentum was shifting in humanity's favor. After months of attrition, Harris believed it was finally time to strike a decisive blow. He pointed at a target marked deep in enemy-held Florida. Intelligence says this is one of the last working fuel stations. Without it, their vehicles and air units will be grounded within weeks. If we take this, we cut off their southeast forces and collapse their front line. His lieutenant studied the objective, one voiced concern, even for a specialized team. This mission carries huge risk. The zone is crawling with enemy patrols. Success will need perfect timing and a lot of luck. Harris responded firmly. I won't throw our fighters into a suicide run. This has to work, which is why we mobilize everyone we've got and hit them with full strength. Are we all in a wave of agreement? Filled the room very well. Then the decision was final. Across the camp, volunteers rushed to prepare their gear and weapons. As word of the upcoming mission spread across resistance channels, Harris gave final instructions to each squad leader. Night settled. Over the land, as a makeshift convoy crept toward the target fighters huddled in mud-soaked machines, clutching explosives and signal devices. Harris hoped this desperate move would succeed at first light. The assault began. Explosives tore open enemy defenses, while hidden saboteurs severed power lines at the same moment. Fighters surged from rooftops and stormed from tunnels below, catching the Tarragon off guard. In thick smoke and confusion, the defenders scrambled to hold ground. But the resistance came from every direction, and they came fast. Harris watched with pride as units he had trained led the charge, striking with precision and fury. Hours of brutal close-quarter combat followed, but at last the humans claimed control. Radios erupted, with celebration as scouts confirmed the fuel stores and armored units were seized intact. Even Harris cracked a smile at the miracle they had just pulled off. Beaten enemy forces scattered into nearby swamps trying to escape, but resistance fighters pursued them through the dense brush for days. Finally, Harris ordered a stop, letting the last Tarragon stragglers run rather than risk more lives. The mission had succeeded. They had struck a massive blow, and it echoed across the world in every occupied region. People lit fires in celebration. For the first time in half a year, they had proof the enemy could be beaten. Morale surged, and fresh volunteers flooded the ranks. Just then, a breathless scout stumbled into camp, eyes wide. "Sir, alien fleet is moving. They're pulling out of orbit right now." Harris ran to the observation towers and looked through the scopes, stunned to see the massive vessels rising into the stars. General Zax had realized staying on Earth meant certain defeat. The human campaign of sabotage and endless pressure had worked beyond all expectation. No longer did the skies swarm with enemy craft. Instead, joyful crowds emerged from hiding to reclaim shattered cities and burned neighborhoods. As darkness returned, Major Harris stood among his soldiers gathered by firelight and spoke. "Today, we have forced the invaders to flee our skies, and we've shown them humanity will never bow. This world is ours by right, but know this: one day we will bring justice to the Tarragon for what they've done, and it will be on their soil. This is only the beginning." Thunderous cheers rang beneath the stars as the people of Earth faced an uncertain tomorrow. No longer alone, no longer afraid. Their war was far from over. But for now they had stood together and survived against impossible odds, and that was victory enough.